Alright YouTube, so I'm waiting for my brother to show up here so we can fire up the Monte Carlo and hopefully we don't have any issues today. What I wanted to talk about was oil consumption, excessive oil consumption, ridiculous oil consumption, and oil consumption to the point to where what can you do, where can you go, what's the ultimate fix? Well, first you need to identify the root cause of it, and it could be multiple root causes, and lack of maintenance and not just oil changes is the disease, right? So we'll just say from 0 to 30,000 miles, your vehicle may or may not consume oil. Not leak it, consume it, meaning you're getting your oil changes done based on the manufacturer's recommendations, which is 5 or 8 or 10,000 miles, which is completely ridiculous. But what do you know? You buy the car from them, and this is what they tell you to do. And then in most cases, some people go, well, it can go a little bit longer, and then it can go a little bit longer, and then catastrophic failure. So some manufacturers are saying your engine is designed to burn oil. But what do you know about cars? You don't check your oil, and you're not going to go to the dealership every week to have them check your oil, and no one at the gas station is going to do it. So what do you have to do? Visit your trusty mechanic or figure out how to do it yourself. But the point is, how do you combat oil consumption? It all depends on the engine, it all depends on the design, it all depends on how neglected the engine was, but you need a starting point, you need a baseline. So the dealership is not going to be any help to you once it's out of warranty. You're going to say, yeah, sorry, sir, you need a new engine. That's basically what they're going to say, or a short block or whatever the case may be. And it's your fault because you didn't do your maintenance soon enough, and they won't take any responsibility for it, which some are and some aren't. But once it's out of warranty, you're screwed. So what do you need to do? You need to find a guy that can steer you in the right direction, and we'll give you some for instances. Typically, oil consumption is by design in most cases. So they're saying, I'm going to say, crappy internal engine designs is what the problem is. Untested systems is what the problem is. You're the tester for these manufacturers now. They don't put time in the testing of systems anymore because it's too costly. It's too time consuming. So they cut that out, and now you're the vehicle owner or the guinea pig. And whatever you complain about or whatever issues that you have or software issues or glitches, they just keep scuttlebutting you along until they figure it out, right? Until it's out of warranty. So there's vehicles that have software issues that are still unresolved today. And Ford won't even release them off of their assembly line parking lots. They just can't fix it yet. The IT department, the engineers, and everyone can't figure it out. But anyway, so you have oil consumption, and now you don't know what to do. Your regular mechanic may or may not. You just may be a spill and fill kind of person that goes to the quick lube all the time. They don't have a fucking clue. So now you need to find a guy like myself or somebody that says, hey, we need to get a baseline on this car, especially if they don't know the vehicle, they don't know the history, and we need to start with a fresh oil change and monitor it, right? And you need to get a baseline on how much oil is it consuming. But in the interim, what you can do is take some steps to try and reduce the oil consumption or eliminate it. Oil consumption primarily comes from worn valve guides, seals, piston rings, scored pistons, scored walls, oil cooked on the rings so bad that the rings can't expand and contract, and when they do contract, and the slime that's in your ring lands, that they stick and stay closed, and then there you have more oil consumption. So in most cases, you need a short block, depending on how bad it is. And if you continue to keep running your car low on oil, there's going to be more mechanical damage in your engine than you're aware of. And I will say VVT screens, timing chains, on and on and on and on. So in the end, it's most likely you need a new engine. But there are things that you can do to try and resolve it. It's like, all right, we can do a pre-piston soak, take the spark plugs out, obviously replace them, soak the top of the pistons and rings and try and break up some of that sludging gum in there. And that could be a process, but it's still cheaper than $8,000 or $10,000 for a new engine. Clean, clear, and replace the PCV system. And also switch to a different grade of oil and see if you can't slow it down or eliminate. So some PCV modifications can be made. Catch cans will help prevent And people say put a catch can on. A catch can is not fixing the problem. The catch can is eliminating more of that going into the combustion chambers. So a catch can would need to be maintained also, right? But your goal is to stop the oil consumption or eliminate it or slow it down to a manageable point. But there are ways to try and combat it. And I've had a few customers come in that we've taken certain steps to try and get a baseline on it, and they're just not salvageable. And that all comes from poor maintenance intervals. So it can be fixed, and at the cost of 100% replacing your engine or a short block, and you're not getting a new engine. You can buy a new engine, that complete crate engine, if they still make them. And it's probably worth doing that to your car, because if you buy a brand new vehicle for another $40,000 or $50,000 and you continue to have the same maintenance practices, you're going to wind up with the same. It's going to wind up with the same bad marriage. So if you had a bad marriage before and you don't do anything and you don't learn from your mistakes and you remarry again and you still have the same bad habits, you're going to have the same problem. So what's the sense, of even going down that road? It's very costly. I'm sure people can relate to that. Bad marriages are very costly. And your vehicle is no different. If you don't treat your vehicle right, it's going to be a bad marriage in the end. You're going to be stuck with a car that you probably still owe money on, that needs an engine that's not under warranty, that you don't want to pay for. But it is, you need to get a baseline. So that's either you're going to get a baseline, your regular mechanic's going to get a baseline, and it's going to be a little bit of a process, but it is possible. Motor flushes, pre-piston soaks, PCV replacements, tons of things to try and get a baseline on it. I mean, I just had a guy in here with a newer Audi that's doing 3 quarts a week in his Audi. That is unheard of. At that point, there's no fixing that car. If you're consuming that much oil in a week, you're done. It's time for a new engine. But if you're burning, 2 quarts, say every 5,000 miles, which I still don't recommend that you do that, reduce your oil change intervals to 3,000 miles and get more of a baseline of what's going on. And, there's ways to try and slow it down or eliminate it. But, it's all going to be, some surgery and some experimentation to figure it out. But it is possible. Not every vehicle is going to be junk. But if you're the type of person that you haven't maintained it, chances are it's probably not salvageable. But and anything's better than you driving around with low oil all the time, ruining the engine further and further and further, and staying on top of it. No different than changing your children's diaper when they were little, is important. Thanks for watching.